Ailsa, you were there when George, literally when George was born, but you were working for the Queen when Prince George was born. What's the dynamic there with William and his children? Because am I right in recalling, it's before my time, that if we had the footage, we would see you laying out the easel announcing Prince George's...
I did. So there was a letter signed by all the medical team who were present for George's birth, and it was the official announcement, just saying, you know, the weight, baby born, healthy baby, healthy mother. And I walked across that very famous gravel forecourt and I put the easel up.
What's that like doing? It's a silly question, but...
Well, it's of course, you know, press secretaries are always behind the cameras. We're never sort of the story. And suddenly when you become the story, it's almost overwhelming. And I remember coming home and my son was only 5 or 6 at the time. And he said, "Hi, Mum, saw you on telly. What's for supper?" And that's very grounding, actually.
They did also put it out on a tweet and all these other things as well. So it wasn't that 1,000 years ago.
No, it's modernity and tradition. It does make you
sound like you were doing it a long, long time ago, but it's like they were putting the easel out and everything. They did have modernity as
Modernity and tradition.
Did you ever get any sense, I mean, it's very early days then, George had only just been born, but did you ever get any sense about William's, fatherhood, the way that he dotes on his children, he would maybe want them to be brought up in the countryside rather than a big palace?
I think, you know, he might be a prince, but he was also a new father, and like any new father, you have that overwhelming sense of pride, but also, you know, it's terrifying. And he's spoken about, you know, having to practice putting the car seat in when the baby came out of hospital. So, yeah, I think he was like any new father. It's that amazing sense of joy, but you're sort of, you know, you're on display to millions of people globally when you're walking out of that hospital, which is quite terrifying.
So we expect William and Catherine and the 3 children to be in Balmoral this summer. The King earlier this week, there was a lovely little ceremony. You've probably seen it. Yeah. You've probably been there with the Shetland pony, and then he was welcomed by the soldiers into Balmoral. The whole family's going to be gathering there. Prince Andrew's up there with Sarah Ferguson, by the way. He was banned from Christmas, but he's allowed there for summer. What happens at Balmoral? Is it a time? I imagine I believe it's probably a time where all the family just get to sit around, have a barbecue or have a nice meal, have a dance, whatever they do at Balmoral, sort some issues out, talk about trivial stuff, talk about important things. What happens at Balmoral, Ailsa? Well,
of course, you know, the monarchy, the head of state, doesn't stop just because you're on summer holidays in Scotland. So the Queen still used to go through her red boxes every day. She would entertain heads of state. The Prime Minister at the time would always come up for a long weekend, sometimes with their family, sometimes without. So, you know, I suppose figuratively, she will go through those gates of Balmoral and you sort of hang your crown on the gateposts and, you know, you do feel more relaxed. And it is much more relaxed. Even dressing is much more relaxed. They've got their kilts on, you know, chinos. It's not the sort of the suits and ties, and the staff are the same as well. And it's beautiful. You know, I remember the last time I went up there and we were driving in the estate, and Queen Camilla, she was the Duchess of Cornwall then, was just out walking on her own with her dog. And they do feel much more relaxed and at home in Balmoral.
Do you think they will? Am I imagining this? Is this something I'm making up in my head that, you know, Andrew could be sitting there with Charles and this is the one time or only 2 times of the year where they actually get to sit down and properly spend time with each other and talk about some of the major issues, family issues?
One would like to think so.
A monster I recall, a friend of mine told me this, was when the Duke of Edinburgh used to go up there, he was always like wanting to be free. You know, he didn't want anybody with him. But when he would go off on his excursions, he'd be up about 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, before anybody else, you know, revved up. And of course, he was assigned a protection officer with him. And of course, off he was going to go. He said, "I don't need you." And a few expletives later would say, "Just off you go." He said, and the protection officer said, "Look, I've been assigned to you. I have to be with you." He said, "Well, no, I don't need you. You know, off you go." And started getting rather loud, and, you know, being a few expletives later, and so much so that the guy said, "Right," he took the keys out of the ignition, and then started walking back to the police hut, of which sent the Duke into a rage. And at this point, the Queen lifts up the window, says, "Philip, what on earth's the matter?" To which he then said to the protection officer, "Get in. We don't want to upset the Queen." And then they drove off together. So these sort of things happen. Also, but he used to go off fishing a lot. And I remember two photographers from the Sun, friends of mine when I was working up in Scotland, were just by a lake, and he just turned up with his boat on top of his car, or been so long, and they helped get it into the lock of the small lake. And they thought they were policemen, but they were actually two photographers. One of them from the Sun, a guy called Mark Sweeney from the Scottish Sun, and he loaded up the. They loaded it up, and he said, well, you know, where are you stationed? He said, oh, no, we're with the Sun, sir. And he goes, oh. He said, well, you better hang around a little bit longer and I'll give you some photographs. And he did exactly that. And he gave them the photographs and they dispatched it back to London. So, I think they're quite relaxed when they're up there.
They are. It's a very definite atmosphere.
Do you think they'll decide on anything? Do you think there's anything's ever like they sat down and talk about major issues? I mean, let's mention Harry. I mean, we know he's coming over in September. Would he be welcome to come to Balmoral this summer? Could you ever see that happening?
I personally don't. I think that his bridges are well and truly burnt.
Not a warm welcome at Balmoral. I can't imagine it happening. The story comes up every year.
I think it depends who's up there. I think the King has made it clear that the door will always be open for him. So I think if the King was up there on his own,
I don't think he has made it clear. I think that was a meeting between a press secretary who was escorted outside and was photographed with Harry's PR people that got what they wanted. I think the King's position at this moment in time is nothing has really changed.
I wouldn't be too sure.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, it's big enough to put. You've been to Balmoral.
Yes, I have.
There's lodges on the estate.
Absolutely.
There's Craig Owen Lodge. I mean, there's more enough to have Harry in there and have a little dinner together.
Yeah, and there's lots of cottages on the estate. So yes.
And keep William and Catherine away. And then
but you're assuming then that the King has forgiven everything and he's moving on with what happened when Harry and Meghan totally insulted his wife and insulted the country at the same time in what they've done. I think it's very difficult position for the King, but I don't think a lot has changed.
Do you think they'll be watching Meghan's new Netflix show next week? Because we will have to be talking about that in future shows. We're going to have to be watching it. You don't think we'll be sitting around the big TV in Balmoral watching it?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I don't think an awful lot of TV will be watched in Balmoral, to be honest.
Yeah, well, most of my history is based on what I see in The Crown. They seem to love walks, barbecues,
reading as well,
reading.
Yeah, they have their books to read.
Yeah.
But I think
fishing,
painting, yeah, reading.
Oh, it sounds bliss, doesn't it?